Hello everyone, my name is Kevin P. McAuliffe, and not only am I a regular Boris TV contributor, I'm also a Creative Cow leader in Media Composer and Symphony training, as well as being a Media Composer editor for over 15 years. And one thing that working extensively with Media Composer and Symphony has taught me is that I get more work done faster if I stay inside of my non-linear editing application. And with the inclusion of Avid FX with my Media Composer and Symphony application, this has now become easier than ever. In this excerpt from my Introduction to Avid FX training video, we're going to take a look at the Introduction to Text lesson, and you're going to see quickly why Avid FX is going to be your go-to plugin for all of your text and compositing needs. Okay, so I thought for this lesson on text, we'd actually build a bumper. This could be a bumper going out to a commercial break or even coming back from a commercial break where we're going to add text in. So let's go through the whole process, and we're going to talk about text once we get to the point where we're going to want to add text into this bumper. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is to hit Command and 8 on the Mac, Control and 8 for all my Windows friends out there. I'm going to take the Avid FX main filter, drag it right down here. I'm going to drop it right on top of my clip. I'm going to press Shift and Y to step into effects mode, my shortcut for effects mode, and I'm simply going to say launch the user interface. What's going to happen is once Avid FX launches, let's get in and let's build a little bumper nice and quick here. Now you're going to notice that in Media Composer or Symphony, I only had one layer of video, yet Avid FX always defaults to having 2 layers of video. But you know what? That's okay in this case because I'm actually going to want to duplicate this layer of video, and you're going to see why in just a second. Now obviously if I didn't need the other video layer, I could simply select it and delete it. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep video layer 1 here for right now, and I'm just going to turn it off, and you're going to notice that obviously nothing is on video layer 2. Easy enough to switch. What I'm going to do is navigate right over here to V2, and we're just going to switch that here to V1, and there we go. Same clip on both tracks now. What I'm going to want to do now is I'm going to add a color layer to this project. So let's come over here, and we're simply going to click on the Add Color Media button. It's going to give me a solid color. Of course, black is the default color. Now let's actually navigate up to the Controls tab, because remember, depending on what we have selected, this Controls tab is going to give us different information based on the clip or the part of the clip that we have selected. So let's navigate back up to the color solid, and I'm simply going to click on the face because I want to change this color to be blue. So let's change this to blue. I'm simply going to say, okay, there we go. Blue looking very good. And what I'm going to do for right now is I'm just going to turn this layer off because I want to do some work on this background layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to select video 1. I'm actually just going to drop it down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an effect to the face track here. So let's navigate down. I'm going to right click on face. I'm going to select filters. And let's do a hue and saturation effect. So we're just going to come up to hue, saturation, and lightness. Now remember, with it selected, it's going to appear up here in the Controls tab. So let's come down and let's just put the saturation all the way down at -100. Now again, what's important to keep in mind is that because I'm not at the beginning, what we're going to want to do is make sure that first of all our color solid starts at the beginning, but also that our saturation effect starts at the beginning. What we're also going to do is keep in mind that as I go here, because I have that keyframe selected as I drag through, what's going to happen is depending on what I have selected, these parameters might animate. So what I'm going to want to do is just make sure that I switch my keyframe interpolation from easy ease to be constant, so it's the same the entire way through. We're going to want to set that each time we come in and change a parameter. So what I'm going to want to do now is simply select the face. I'm going to right click again and say filters. I'm going to come back up to colors and blurs, and let's just select a Gaussian blur. And let's come up here and we'll just set the blur amount here to be, it doesn't really matter, it doesn't need to be too much. That's fine, probably about 12. And again, we'll set the keyframe interpolation to be constant. And let's get into our color solid. I'm just going to turn it back on now. But for me, 100% is too much for this layer. So what I want to do is I'm going to navigate up to opacity. Let's set the opacity at about 25. Looking nice, again, constant. And what I'm going to do now is navigate over to the Composite tab, and I'm going to choose an Apply mode, and I'm going to choose Overlay. And you can see that we now have a very cool look for the background that we're going to put our other video layer here, video layer 1, over top of. And what's actually very cool about this, and it's very versatile, is that if I select the face here, I can come back up and really select any color that I want and create a very different look every time. So if you're working on a show and you need to have 15 different looks, but you want to keep them all very similar, you can use the technique I just showed you and just change the color up each time. But let's put it back to blue because I happen to like the blue color. I'm going to say OK. And let's come up to video layer 1. Again, I'm going to want to make sure I come back to the beginning, so I'll just hit home on both Mac and Windows. And let's twirl down video 1. And what we're going to want to do inside of video layer 1 is I'm just going to come up. Let's just shrink it down a little bit. I should probably turn it on so that I can actually see it. There we go. And maybe just a little bit less. Maybe we'll make it about 47. That's not too bad. And let's drag the layer over here to the right. And what I want to do now is just rotate it a little bit. Now I could obviously come over here and rotate it here, but why don't we use our OpenGL interactors? You'll remember W, E, and R are the shortcuts on the keyboard. W obviously for transform, E for rotation, R for scale. So we're going to hit E on the keyboard, and I can now take this and rotate it in the Y-axis. You can see shortcuts are really the way to go when working in Avid FX. And we're going to position this right up here. And what I can do now is just bump the quality of this down to draft and to quarter, and I'll just preview this. And you're going to see that I've now created, and what I should have done, and I didn't take my own advice, I'm just going to stop this for a second here, is I should have come up here and set all of these values to be constant as well. That way everything stays exactly where it is. Those two layers are linked together, so I only need to set it for one of them. And you'll see that we've now created a very cool background. And what we're going to do is we're just going to put some text right in here. And this is where we're going to get in. We're going to talk about text inside of Avid FX. It's our introductory talk about text to get you up and running. And then in the next lesson, we're going to talk about some more advanced text techniques. But you can see this creates a very cool look inside of Avid FX. Very nice. And I'll just play this here. That's good enough. Very cool. Okay, so now let's get in and let's add a text layer, and let's start our talk on the basics of text inside of Avid FX. Now you'll notice over here at the top of the timeline that we have 4 options when it comes to text. We can add a new title container, we can add a text page, we can add vector text, and we can add extruded 3D text. Now we're going to get to the extruded 3D text, the text page, and the title container in the next lesson. But for right now, what I want to do is just simply add vector text. I'm going to click on vector text, and you're going to see 2 things have happened. One, I've got a new layer in here, a new text layer, and also the text window has now opened. Now, obviously, if we need to find the text window for some reason, let's say we happen to close it by accident, remember, we can always find it right up here under window, and it's right here, text window. Now, with the text window there, all we need to do to actually add text to our timelines is simply navigate up, and let's just type in Avid FX rocks. And we'll just put an exclamation mark in there. Now it's obviously not big enough, so let's just do a Command and A on the Mac, Control and A on Windows to select all of it. And let's just change the size here. Let's just make the size maybe about 64. I think that's much better. You can see over here in the composite window, that's looking pretty good. Now, obviously, it's sitting right on top of the graphics we just made, but that's okay for right now. We're going to adjust it in just a second. But let's talk about what exactly is going on in the text window. Right now, we're on the main Style tab, and there's a few things in here that I want to point out to you because I think that they're very important. First and obviously foremost is the type of font that you're using and the size. Now you're going to notice beside that we have a couple of arrows, one for the previous font and obviously one for the next font. And you can also get in right below that and you can actually adjust the scale smaller and adjust the scale larger. What you can also do is get in and obviously set the text to be normal, bold, italicized, underlined. You can get in and make it superscript and subscript. And of course you can get in and adjust it to be left justified, center justified, or right justified, and even get in and flush the text left. You can force the text to the center, or you can flush the text to the right. Now there's something else going on here that I want to point out before I move on, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to add a few more instances of Avid FX rocks. I'm just going to select it. I'll add a couple spaces here and I'm going to paste it in, add another couple spaces and paste it in. You see what's going on here. Now, of course, this text is going to go off into oblivion because I haven't actually set the right side of the page yet, which is something that I think we need to do right away. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit and we're going to come back and talk about the rest of these in just a second. Because in some cases, you're going to be typing more than one line of text. And the last thing you want to do is go, okay, I think I want this one to end sort of here. So maybe I'll hit enter and, well, you know what, that's not really quite right. Let me just make sure that I actually hit enter here and not backspace. Okay, that's really not looking right at all. So something's going right. Well, maybe we'll center this up. And no, that's still not looking right. And things get really confusing really quickly. So let me just undo all that stuff that I just did here. And we'll just put everything back the way we had it here. We'll just copy and paste this one more time. I'll just go copy and paste. There we go. What I want to do now is I actually want to set where the page is going to end on the right-hand side, and that's actually done in the next tab down. You'll see the next tab down is appropriately enough the page tab. What I'm going to do is simply select that, and you'll see right now I have no text wrap set. So let's actually turn the wrap on, and you're going to see as soon as I do that, the very first option I have, and really the only option that I have right here, besides the top-down text or the right-to-left reading, is the page width. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come back into the style here for a second. I'm just going to left justify my text, and let's just make sure that we have everything set to be left here and make sure that there's nothing spaced in here. And you can see that the reason that everything is laid out the way that it is because right now the edge of the page is set right here. You can see where the marker is set. Now what I want to do is stretch this out a little bit, but you can see if you take a look over here at the composite window, this actually centers things up perfectly inside of my frame. But let's say I wanted to stretch it out a bit or even contract it a little bit. All we have to do that is simply come down to our page tab, grab the page width, and just drag it out a little bit. And you can see that this is how you can get in and adjust the sides of your page to make them either wider or narrower. Very nice. And let's just come back up to our style tab, and you can see again, I'm just going to select everything. What I'm going to do here is just center justify everything. There we go, looking very nice. And I think I'm going to go back to one line of text because there's actually something else I want to talk about here. And you know what? Let's actually just come down. We'll just put in the words Avid FX. I'm just going to type it in all caps, Avid FX. You're going to notice that once I start typing with caps lock turned on, right down here rendering is suspended, and to release caps lock to continue. Something important to keep in mind is that anytime you hit caps lock, all of your rendering is going to be suspended. But obviously as soon as I let that go, you'll see we're back to normal and we can keep working and see exactly what's going on in the composite window. Now what I want to do here is just set this back to be left justified here. There we go, looking very nice. And I want to show you quickly how to set a tab stop. And tab stops are actually very cool. And what is a tab stop for? Well, a tab stop right now, you'll see that if I select right before the Avid FX word mark that I created, if I hit the tab button, nothing happens. The text jumps down to the next line. Well, I'm just going to delete that for 1 second here. Let's actually backspace it up here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set a tab stop. And how I do that is actually very easy. I'm simply going to come up here to my ruler at the top, and I'm just going to click on right in here, and you can see that I can drag out a little arrow that's pointing to the right. What I'm going to do is drag it right to about here, and I'm going to let it go. What I can do now is simply come right back to the start of Avid FX, and if I hit tab on the keyboard, you're going to see the text is going to jump right across to that tab stop. This is a way that you can actually get in, and when you're doing things like end credits, let's say you wanted to have certain lines all justified in a certain place, you can set that. What I can also do is I can set another tab stop to be even farther down like such, so then I can jump Avid FX down even farther with one click of the keyboard. Now let me just backtrack for 1 second here, because I want to talk about something else here. You're going to notice that as soon as I jump through from one tab stop to the other, everything is still left justified here. Well, what if, and I'm just going to pull this tab stop off of here for a second, what if with this tab stop here, instead of having it left justified, I wanted it to be centered when it jumped to this tab stop? Well, no problem. I'm simply going to hit Control on the keyboard, and you're going to see now that I have the option to change it from left tab to center tab to right tab and to decimal tab. Well, what I'm going to do is simply change it to center tab, and you're going to see that my Avid FX now lines up centered right down the middle of that tab stop. Again, exactly the same with right tab. Very, very cool. These are very handy. Great thing is that if you don't need them, you don't ever need to worry about them. But I like to get in and set them, especially with things like credit crawls. And we're going to get more into credit crawls in the next lesson. Now I'm just going to remove this tab stop, and let's take our Avid FX. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger here. Let's make it about a 91. That's looking pretty good, because I want to talk about probably the 3 most important parameters in here that you're going to be using constantly. And that is leading, tracking, and kerning, located right here. Now, what exactly is the difference between leading, tracking, and kerning? Well, leading determines the amount of space between lines in a paragraph. Tracking is the spacing between the characters in a line of text, and kerning increases or decreases the spacing between certain letters. Now, let me show you what the difference is. So let's just create another line of text. I'm just going to hit enter here. I'm going to type in again, appropriately enough, Avid FX. And what I'm going to do is hit Command and A on the Mac, Control and A on Windows to select all the text. And if I come down and I adjust the leading, you're going to see that as I bring it back and I let go, what's going to happen is that things are going to be updated. I'll just bring it back even farther here just so you can see. You'll see right over here now in the composite window that the text is very, very close together, a lot closer than it was before. What I'll do is show you the difference here. I'm just going to come back. I'll just punch in a value of 0. You'll see the text jump out. I'll come back in here. We'll set this to be like minus 64. And you'll see the text is now practically sitting on top of each other. So you can see how leading works. Very simple to get in, very simple to adjust. And in most cases, this is a parameter you're going to be setting all the time when working with multiple lines of text. Okay, so let's talk about tracking next. What I'm going to do here is just come back. We're just going to type in Avid FX, of course, rocks with an exclamation mark. Our text is a little bit too big, so let's just drop the size down ever so slightly because I want it to fit onto one line here, but I don't want to adjust the page width here. And let's see, do we have enough space yet? Nope, not quite enough. Maybe we'll set this at about 75. There we go, perfect. Okay, turn caps lock off. There we go, Avid FX rocks. Now what I want to do is simply come in and adjust the tracking, and you're going to see as soon as I do, now I'm dragging it out past 0, and you'll see we're going to stretch onto 2 lines. But you can see we're uniformly adjusting the space between each one of those letters. We'll give it a second update here. There we go. Now, where are we going to use something like kerning? Let me just undo what I just did. And we're just going to remove rocks here. And let me just choose 2 letters that this is actually going to work very well with. Actually, we already have it. Let me just delete effects. And I want to take Avid here. And I'm going to increase the size to about 175, just so that it's nice and big. And you can see what's going on here. If I come in here and I adjust the tracking and I start adjusting the space, you can see the space is being adjusted uniformly. But the real issue that I have going on here is that if you look at the space between the V and the I and the D, it's not exactly the same just because of the way that the type is set up. And you notice between the A and the V, because we have these 2 angles here, that there's a lot of space in between them. So what I actually want to do is I want to get in and I want to adjust the kerning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cursor in between those 2 letters. And what most people will do is they'll come down and they'll start dragging like such, which is great. And you know, it's an okay way to work, but how I actually prefer to work, and I'm just going to undo what I just did there, is I'm going to come back in between A and V, and instead of getting in and adjusting the kerning by dragging it, I'm going to hold Option on the Mac, Alt on Windows, and I'm going to use the left and right arrow keys to actually get in and do fine-tune adjusting, just like that. I did a little too much, but now you can see that this actually looks proper. The space in between there, and we can actually space this out a little bit, looks like the space that's in there, which looks like the space that's in there. So Avid now actually looks correct. So you can see how important these 3 parameters, leading, tracking, and kerning, are going to be in your text work inside of Avid FX. Really, not just inside of Avid FX, but really in any text work you do in any application. It doesn't really matter. This is an important concept to understand. Now, the last thing I'd really like to discuss inside of the style window is actually the baseline. And this is something that I always see people doing. It always kind of makes me laugh when I watch them do it, because it's one of those things where they'll take what should be a very simple process and make 87 steps out of it. And I'm going to show you what I mean right now. Where this is actually most commonly used is in dates. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in my birthday, July 30th. Now you can see it actually should be the 30th, not the 20th. There we go, 30th. And what I'm going to do is select everything there, and let's just set the kerning here to be 0 on everything. And I think my text is a bit too big here, so let's set that to be about 120. Perfect. What I'm actually going to do is take TH, and I'm going to make it all caps here. So we'll just go TH. Very nice. And what I want to do is I want to shrink this down, and I actually want to place it at the top of 30. And normally what I'll see people do to do this is they'll actually make a new text layer. They'll take the text, they'll shrink it down small, they'll get in and they'll adjust the position of the text, which is just, it's way too much work. When really all you need to do is to select the text you want to adjust. I'm going to come in, let's make it about half the size, we'll make it about 60. And all I'm going to do then is come in and adjust the style baseline and bring it right up to the top of 30, just like that. And you can see literally in a span of about 2 seconds, I did something that it takes most people about 5 to 10 minutes to create. Style baseline, a fantastic feature. Now, one thing I should also mention here is that we're kind of dealing with a very boring color of our font. It's kind of sort of a whitish gray color. Well, let's get in and adjust that. And you're going to notice here the 3rd tab down is actually the color tab. So let's click on the color tab. You're going to see that right now the fill is turned on, but the color is white. And I can obviously get in and change that to be really whatever color I want. I can make it green if I want to. Now, of course, just because I have TH selected, that's why I changed it to that color. But of course, I can come in and change that. Or why don't I just grab the eyedropper and come over here and I'll just eyedrop that green color so that everything is that green color. Now, what's also great here is that if I select everything, I not only have the option to come down and use a solid color, but I can actually also use a gradient as well. And you'll see that as soon as I turn gradient on, we now have that gradient applied to our text. Very, very cool. What I can also do is click to edit the gradient. You'll see that once I get into the gradient editor, I can not only get in and adjust the colors. Let's just select our black color here. And what I always like to do is just set blue as one color. And I like to come down to the other end here, set red as the other. I think it's just because I like the purple in the middle. And obviously we can adjust where that midpoint is. And you'll see it as I'm dragging the midpoint, you see it adjusting down here under the midpoint parameter. Now, of course, I can obviously get in and eyedrop colors as well to set whatever color I want. And what I also like is the fact that I can come down here to the type and I can change between linear, and you'll see I can switch to radial. And you're going to notice that as soon as I switch from linear, you'll see that I have the angle option here that I can obviously get in and adjust the angle of the gradient. But what I love is the fact that when I switch, I now have the center point options. So you'll see everything updates as I switch. If I switch to contour, we now have the fade, we have bevel, edge, and revolve. But if I come back up to linear, you're going to see down here that we also have a whole bunch of other options. We get in and create some very cool bands. And then we can come in and simply say OK. And what's going to happen is that our text is going to be updated immediately with that new gradient look. But for me, I think I'm just going to stick with that color solid for right now. Not that I'm big on that green color. So maybe we'll just set it back to be, you know what, why don't we set it to be blue, sort of the same color as the background, because we're going to want to get in and add some other styles to this font right now with the next two tabs in the text tool. And because we're going to need this text to stand out a little bit, let's head down to the border tab. Border, or what most people commonly refer to as stroke, is a great way to get in and add edges or borders around your text. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the first instance of border, and you're going to see that as soon as I do, I now have a black outline around my text, obviously because black is set to the edge color and the edge is set to an edge width of 2. What I can obviously do is get in and increase that as much as I want to. We'll just drag it out here and let go, and you'll see it update right there. And we can obviously get in and change the color. But what I love about the border parameter is I can also get in and I can actually bevel the text as well. And you'll see as soon as I do, I now get this very cool bevel that really gives it almost a 3D look to it. What I can now obviously do is get in and adjust where that highlight is. You'll see as I rotate it around, the highlight changes. Very cool. We'll just click through it just like such. Very nice. We can obviously get in and adjust the highlight color and the shade color as well. And if I come back to the edge style, you'll see that I also have a radial option as well. Very, very cool. Now I'm just going to come back up to bevel for 1 second. You'll see that I can also come in and I can change the bevel from being centered to being inside and to being outside. And what's also very cool about the border parameter and the next parameter, which is obviously the drop shadow parameter, is that we can actually get in and add multiple instances to create very, very different looks. Let me show you what I mean. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the edge style originally to be just plain. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to activate the next instance of border. And what I'm going to do is instead of adjusting parameter 1 for border, I'm going to come down and select the next option. And let's come in and let's bevel this. And let's actually change the bevel color to be just something completely crazy like red. Just because I want to show you how different this is going to look. You can see now that we got a little bit of red around the bevels and we still have that black edge around. So this is how we can get in and really start changing things up and really start creating very, very cool and very different looking text for all of the projects you're working on. What I'm going to do is just turn both of the borders off for a second because I just want to show you the last one here, shadow, which obviously fairly self-explanatory, a drop shadow. We're going to turn the first instance of it on. Very cool drop shadow. We can obviously stretch it way out here, have it right behind the text. Let's actually stretch it out a little bit farther, and we can obviously come in, adjust the softness, and we can also get in and obviously add different drop shadows in here, much like we could with borders, to create very different looks. One thing that I like to do all the time, let me give you an example of where I'd use something like this, is I'm going to come back, I'm going to set that to be 4, but maybe I want to give this text almost like a glow. What I'm going to do is turn on the next instance of shadow. I'm just going to come down to the second parameter here, and instead of having it at 45, we're going to stick it up here, and now we've almost got a glow going on around the text. So you can see where you would use these multiple parameters inside of border and shadow. It's a fantastic extra feature that we have inside of Avid FX, and something that I use on quite a regular basis, especially with shadow. Okay, so we've talked a lot about creating text. I'm just going to navigate right back up here to the Style tab. We've talked a lot about creating text, but let's be honest. Really, in a lot of cases, we don't really have a lot of time to get in and experiment with text. We need to get in and create something. In a lot of cases, we just end up throwing something together very quickly. And you know what? What if we had the option of getting in and maybe having a whole bunch of text presets that we could work with right off the bat? Well, guess what? We actually do. What I'm going to do is navigate right down here to the Style Palette, and I'm simply going to click on Style Palette, and you're going to notice the Style Palette's going to appear over here right beside the composite window. What I'm going to do is just take it, we're going to drag it right over here, and we're going to place it right beside text. There we go. And what the style window is obviously going to let us do is fairly straightforward. We're going to be able to get in and apply all of these different styles as presets to our text to give us a basis as to where to start. And what's actually very cool about the style window is you can get in and create and save your own style so that you can go back to them over and over again. And you'll see if you take a look over here on the left-hand side, we can see what exactly is going to be applied with this style. What's very cool is that, for example, I'm using the Denmark font here, and you know what? I really need to stick with the Denmark font because it is the font for Boris FX. So what I need to do is make sure that I'm not adjusting the font, and I don't want to adjust the size because in most cases, that's what I'm going to be setting, the font and the size. What I just want to do is adjust the face, the fill, the edge, the shadow, and the transform. So you're going to see that if I navigate over here to the Vitamin B style preset, and I simply double click on it, immediately over here in the composite window, my text has been updated to reflect that style preset. You'll see the font and the sizes stayed exactly the same. The only thing that's changed is the parameters that I have selected here. So you can see the Style tab, a fantastic tool to get in and very quickly create different looks and apply different looks to the text to create different looks every time. And you're going to see in here that we have a whole bunch of different style options to choose from. For example, if I wanted text that had borders, I can simply select it. Here we go. There you go. Very cool border. Very cool border. You can see, as simple as it is to get in and drop down this window, we can get in and start applying all of these different styles very quickly and very easily. And obviously, if you had your own style created and you wanted to add it, you can simply navigate right over here and select Add Style, and then you're going to have that style at your disposal any time you need to use it. Now, obviously, the Styles tab can be found not only within the text window, but you can simply navigate up to Window, and you're going to find it right down here under Style Palette. What I'm going to do is just hide it again, and it's going to send us right back to the main text window. Now, since we are creating a bumper going to commercial break, let's actually come in and let's adjust our text size. We'll make the text size maybe about 80. And of course, I want to say coming up next, ... There we go. Perfect. Now, this is actually still a little bit too big. So let's just select our font. I'll just do Command A to select everything. Control and A for all my Windows friends. We'll set this to be about 60. And let's just center justify this. Looking very nice. What we're going to do now is just position this text roughly where we're going to want it to go, right about here. Now, of course, remember, because I adjusted this on the first keyframe, that's going to move. So what we're going to want to do is come back to the Controls tab here. We're going to want to switch to our constant interpolation here. There we go. I'll set the Z one here, even though I don't really need to. Now coming up stays exactly where it needs to be. And one last thing that I want to point out is that, of course, if I wanted to navigate up to Window and I wanted to come down to the library browser, you'll see, I'll just take the library browser, we'll just place it right up here beside the text tab, just like that. I can actually come into my Avid FX 6 keyframe library, come right down here to titles, and you'll see that I actually have all of these presets located inside of Avid FX. So for example, animated text in, I could simply choose, I don't know, left to right, and I can actually get a preview of what each one of these are going to look like by simply playing them, and I can actually play them all if I wanted to here. I'll deselect that one so you can actually see here are all these different text animations that I have at my disposal. You'll see that if I don't have the keyframes generated, I can simply click on the Generate Keyframes button. You'll see in a matter of seconds I have them, deselect it, and there we go. I can obviously get in, apply these presets, or get in and animate and create my own to create a very unique look for whatever show I happen to be working on. Okay, so I hope this introductory look at text inside of Avid FX has really given you a good basis to get in and start creating really, really cool text looks really in no time flat. Okay, coming up in our advanced text features, which is our next tutorial, we're going to take a look at creating credit crawls with the title container. We're going to create some type-on effects. We're going to look at text on a path, and we're going to look at 3D extruded text with bevels and texture materials.